Hello students, I'm going to walk you through how to analyze your data for your assignment. So the first thing you're going to want to do is when you open the file, yours should look something like mine, minus the data here will be empty initially for you. So you want to be able to use the same document for everybody in your group. So have one person have kind of the master file, and they'll share it with all the members of your group. So click on share, and then they can just make sure it says anyone with the link can edit. You can either enter their emails, or you can just copy this link here, copy the link, and then in your email, you can just send it to all the members of your group, right? Copy and paste the link. That will make sure everybody in your group is working on the same file. So each member can just go in and enter the data they've collected. So you'll want to change out all of the students to your actual names. So if you're Adam Smith, go ahead and change that for student 1. So once your key looks like this little plus mark, you can just drag down and you can say all the data for Adam Smith. And then you'll enter in your 5 participants data. So variable 1 for me is going to be number of hours a week spent watching TikTok. So I'm going to shorten that to TikTok hours versus study hours. Now make sure if you shorten what your variables are that you write out what they are in full in the result or the conclusion. So again, this is number of hours of TikTok watched a week, and I'll put that down here in the results. So if I was Adam Smith and I was collecting data, I would have my first participant report hours a week they watch TikTok and hours a week they study, and then I would enter those in on the same line, and then same for participant 2, 3, 4, and 5. So in this case, I'm just going to say, this is the data collected by Professor T, and I've done that for all 20 data points. Now you might have only 3 members in your group, and in that case, these will just be left blank, and you won't need to worry about that. So now that everybody's had a chance to enter their data points for their 5 participants each, and they're all the columns here are full, you've labeled your variables. Now we're going to find the correlation between these two. So I'm going to want to use data, and on the side here we want a button that says data analysis, but you'll notice mine is missing and yours probably is too. So we're going to go to File and then Options. On Add-ins, you're going to look for Analysis Tool Pack, press Go at the bottom, and then just make sure this is checked, Analysis Tool Pack, press OK. Then when we go back to Data, this button now appears, so Data Analysis. Under Correlation, we're going to do just that. We're going to press Correlation. OK. Now I'm going to click here Labels in first row so that I can include the labels in my output. So for my input range, I'm going to press the arrow and I'm going to highlight all of my data and the labels there at the top. Press Enter. Now this is grouped by column, so that looks good, right? I have the columns are the vertical bars, so we have TikTok hours, and then the next column is study hours, so that looks good. And then I'm just going to choose output range. On this arrow, select under correlation here so that all my data is just right where I want it to be. Press OK. Now you can extend these columns to see the full titles here. So the only number here I need is this one, so I'm going to highlight that. This is my correlation coefficient value, which means my data found a negative correlation of 0.65. which is a pretty moderate correlation. That would be pretty strong in the realm of psychology. Granted, my data is all made up, so your correlation might be much weaker. Anything closer to 0 is a pretty weak correlation. But just for fun, we're going to see if this is statistically significant. So now that I've found my correlation coefficient under regression, I'm going to see if this value of the negative 0.65 is statistically significant. Is it likely that we just found these results due to chance, right? Which is pretty, it's more common to be found by chance if I have, you know, a pretty small sample size, which I do. I only have 20 data points, so maybe we just got this by happenstance. So under regression, I'm going to go back to data, under data analysis, and instead of doing correlation, I'm going to use regression here, just like the title says. Press OK. So in this case, instead of highlighting the data all together, I'm going to do it one part at a time. So my Y range, again, I'm going to include the labels here so that when the output comes, I know what's what. So with the Y, I'm going to do TikTok hours and then all of the data from that column. And then for the X range, I'll do study hours, including all of the data there. Again, for my output range, I'm going to select this area under regression right up until that label of graph. This one will need more space than correlation for the output. And then I won't worry about including any of the other information in this case, and then press OK. So here's my summary output here. There's a lot of information going on under regression. This is trying to find the actual equation for the line of best fit, which is more information than we need. What we really want to know is this value, our Pearson R correlation value, is it statistically significant? Now you'll notice this multiple R value is the same, except that it hasn't included the negative, which is a good sign. It means we've done our correlation correctly. And really what we want to know is this value. To be statistically significant, our significant value here, our p-value, needs to be less than 0.05, which is alpha. And in this case, it is. 0.001 is much less than 0.05. So for my results, I'm going to say something like there was a negative correlation of R equals negative 0.65 between the number of hours on TikTok in a week and the number of hours studied in a week. This correlation was statistically significant with p less than 0.0002. So I've taken my p-value here, and you'll notice it's the same value here as well. So you'll talk more about these different values in your statistics class. And it was less than 0.05, and I've reported the correlation value here from our correlation output. Now let's create our graph. I'm going to move this down. This is, again, just what I've added. So for our graph, we're going to highlight the data points, just the data, don't include the titles this time. Under Insert, we're going to click on this scatter plot. So I'm going to move this graph here to go right under Graph. Now click on the plus mark. We don't need a chart title, but let's have axis titles. I'm going to delete this title. Typically in APA, you don't have a chart title, but we do want to label our axes. So the x-axis in this case would be TikTok hours, and the y-axis would be study hours. So again, this is number of hours studied in a week versus number of hours on TikTok in a week. And I'm going to ask to include a trend line. So here we can see a clear negative correlation between these data points. So I'm going to write a little conclusion here, and here I want you to write what your original hypothesis was. So you might say, we predicted that the more students spent time on TikTok, the less time they would spend studying. Let's say our hypothesis was correct. We found a negative, I have to forgive my typos. We found a negative correlation between the number of hours spent on TikTok in a week and the number of hours spent studying in a week. This relationship was significant. Now, in your conclusion, are you going to say that TikTok causes fewer study hours? No. Make sure you're not using any phrasing that implies causality, especially the word cause, right? Because this is just correlational data. So this is exactly what I expect to see saved and uploaded. Make sure you have the first and last name of all of your group members so that they can all get credit. Have that correlational output, the regression output. I recommend keeping these highlighted pieces of information. Have your graph here with the axes labeled and the trend line included. Have a sentence or two summarizing your results. And then in the conclusion, you're just kind of telling us what that correlation means, right? The more time students spent on TikTok, on average, the less time they spent studying. So was your prediction correct or incorrect? Was it statistically significant? So go ahead and save that and then upload it to Canvas.